Sally Hill, and it is a great pleasure to welcome you to the 6th Annual Women's Philanthropy Board Symposium. It's hard for me to believe we're at year 6. In a way, it seems like yesterday that just a very few people met with Dean June Hinton and decided that we needed this organization, and now it's absolutely amazing. I woke up this morning and looked out the window and I thought, oh no, this is the most beautiful time of the year on the Auburn University campus, and it was very foggy and misty, and I was so disappointed for everyone who was driving in, and some of you may be seeing the Auburn campus for the first time. Then I came downstairs and looked out the doors there, and the sun was out. So I think we are blessed. It's going to be a nice day after all. We are delighted to have all of you here, the benefactor members, the associate members, the mentees, the guests, all of you who've never been here before. We think it's going to be a wonderfully informative day, and we thank you for taking time out of your schedules or driving or flying long distances to join us. We are also going to be joined during the course of the day with probably over 200 students who will be coming in and out, and that's always wonderful to see after all. This is a university campus, and that's what makes us feel good when we see these terrific students learning. Included in these will be 56 MBA students. So we're going to see a lot of action. They will be walking in and out of probably the programs as their classes allow. You know, it's a great tribute to the Women's Philanthropy Board that professors feel that this is such an educational event that they are willing to let their students come to something like this. Every one of us has something to give and something to share, and every one of us also has something to learn. And that's really the reason for the Women's Philanthropy Board. That's why we exist. I don't think you've had an opportunity yet, unless you were hiding in a corner in the lobby, to actually go through the program. It's a lengthy one. It's a brilliant one. Congratulations, Sid James and everyone who put it together. When you do have a chance to look, you'll see that there's a great deal of information in it. And I hope you'll take the time to actually read about our speakers today. We are so excited about this program and the speakers that we're going to have. I think that you'll find them not only they're just terrific in their own fields, but they have a great deal to share, very unique perspectives to share with all of us. So we're looking forward to it, and I want to begin, and it's my privilege actually to introduce the first speaker. She is coming to us from Birmingham, Alabama, but she's been on the road for several days, so we're delighted that she was able to find a way to Auburn, Alabama. Actually, she's a University of Alabama graduate. She and her husband live in Birmingham, and they have 2 children, and she's in what I call the third stage of at least my married life. The first one, it's just the 2 of you. The second one, you have children at home. And the third is when they go off to school, and that's the position she's in now. She's in that third stage. She previously worked with Alabama Power and also with Duke Power. She had positions in communications and marketing with both of those companies. She was the first executive director of the Alabama Power Foundation. And I think she has supported and initiated and been involved with more foundations and community interest organizations in this state than anyone I have ever heard of. You know, when you say the word philanthropist, she is indeed a true philanthropist. Actually, that word means several things, and I don't know what it means in Latin. Maybe somebody does. But in the true sense of the word philanthropy, it means goodwill toward all people and promoting human welfare. She does that absolutely indeed. She served on numerous organizations, and you can read about that in the program. I know one of them that I know in particular. She was president of the Central Alabama YMCA. She was a founding early member of Voices for Alabama's Children and Alabama Giving, and she was able to secure national grants for both of those organizations, and believe me, that is not easy to do. She currently serves as the director for Alabama Giving, which is a statewide initiative, but she is with us today in her position as executive director of the Joseph S. Bruno Charitable Foundation. And through her position with that foundation, she has become a wonderful, wonderful friend of the College of Human Sciences, because it is mainly through her work and belief that the College of Human Sciences, in this campaign that just ended a week ago today, they received their largest gift, a $2.5 million gift to the Joseph S. Bruno, there's a lot of words in this, Auburn Abroad in Italy program. Now, I think many of you in this room have actually been over to the campus in Aricia, Italy, and you can realize, having been there, how significant this gift actually is. Jera is also a very big believer in international education. In fact, she's studying Italian, and she's going to get to put that to very good use this weekend, because she's headed to Italy and she's going to visit the Aricia campus, and she's going to see firsthand how much this gift that she masterminded is going to mean to all the university students who go through that study abroad program in the future. I'd now like you to please welcome, as I say, a true philanthropist, a beautifully educated and caring woman, Jera Stribling. Before she gets away, since I can't capture her afterwards, this is a small token of our appreciation for you being here today. Thank you.
Good morning. When I look around at the room, I am amazed at how much this Philanthropy Symposium has grown in 6 years from its infancy, which I've heard June and others at the campus talk about. So congratulations to you for making it and growing this much. But when we talk about growing, and in my travels throughout the country, I rarely get to meet with a room full of philanthropic leaders that are women. So I do have to say it's a nice change. I'm glad a few men are here. But it's this group full of women that seems rare in a lot of my travels on philanthropy. Another part of growth that is important that you may not realize is that we live in a very generous state in Alabama. Alabama is ranked 5th in all the country in per capita giving. Now that may come as a shock when you think we live in a very poor state, that we're ranked 5th in individual giving. But despite our generous spirit, we tend to be checkbook givers or philanthropists because we give our income and not our assets. Though we're ranked 5th on one end, I have to tell you the other side of that coin, we're ranked 47th in endowed or planned giving. So as I said, we tend to be checkbook givers. But philanthropy is not charity. And you heard briefly a definition. I can't tell you the Roman word or Latin word, but I will say that its original root meaning, Greek meaning, was philos, or the word that means love of mankind. I think it's a word that says something to us about duty, about justice, about caring for others, about fairness, and doing the right thing. Now, charity is when we give, as I mentioned, of our income. That's immediate needs. Maybe a crisis, a storm victim, maybe United Way, our church budget. But philanthropy is the other side of the coin. It is investing in the future. It's investing and reinvesting in community for things that are long-term solutions to problems like poverty, disease, illiteracy, difficult problems. Now, I could stand up here and tell you that Alabama needs both charity and philanthropy, but I'm going to leave that to Dr. Wayne Flint, the renowned historian, former Auburn professor, and the champion in our state against poverty and its impact on our state. But I have a different appeal to you today. Philanthropy is vital to Alabama because it gives us a way to improve our communities, to invest in them now and for the future. There's been a tremendous growth of philanthropy in Alabama. In the last 6 to 8 years, there has been an increase in charitable remainder trust, annuity trust, and foundations. There are now 700 endowed foundations in the state, They have assets of over $2 billion, and they give away about $680 million a year. Now stop and think about this. This is poor little Alabama that's giving away $680 million. That does not include individuals like you in the room. That doesn't include businesses. And I want to ask, how many of you have heard of giving circles? Know about a fairly new phenomenon called giving circles? Well, most women would like it because it typically has a social beginning usually. It is a group of people who come together of like minds to give together. Their giving could range from a few $100s each to a few $100,000. There's a very active women's giving circle in Montgomery. It started out as a social group of women from 40 to 60 years old. I do have to contrast it, though, as they typically meet for cocktails on Friday afternoons, to another giving circle in Birmingham, Alabama, that's young African-American professionals, and they're called the Change Fund. There's also another new giving circle here called Smart Women with Spare Change. It's a group of Latina women who have come together giving their spare change and have now raised $5,000 for causes for women and girls. You might not have known that in Alabama now there are 10 community foundations. And that's even been expanded to the rural parts of our state, even in the Black Belt. And another Auburn alum, or former professor, Dr. David Wilson, was the one instrumental in starting the Black Belt Community Foundation. If any of you are from this immediate area, I'm currently working with the community leaders in Auburn and Opelika to start a Lee County Community Foundation. Rural communities in our state face some big challenges, but you know, they're no different than urban centers that people think have a lot of money. Because really, building philanthropy is not just for the wealthy, it's for everyone. And it's bringing people together around issues. And in rural places in Alabama, we're starting to see that there is a lot of land, untapped wealth, talented people. But you know, regardless of the community in Alabama, no matter where it is, in the rural parts of the state, in the deep south, in the far north, leaders in Alabama are starting to see that it is looking at assets that is making a difference, not looking at community needs, and leveraging those assets to build community. I recently told a group of Auburn students, as they were starting in a new community of interest, they're going to enter a global community. I said, you really don't belong to community, you build community. And when we talk about community of interest, why are you in this room? What is your common community of interest? Well, I think that we're all drawn here because we want to be part of a community. And however you choose to define that word, it tends to be a safe place for a group of people with kindred spirits who share similar values. And maybe that's why we're here today, to try to understand what is this spark that's within each of us, and what is this responsibility we have that for some reason we believe there can be a better Alabama and a better world, and we must have this sense of love for fellow man. So I want to ask you some questions to think about. In the next few days, and probably at night when we can't sleep, or the next few weeks, I want to ask if you know the answer to this, that you can tell somebody the answer to this. What is your vision? What is it that you feel passionate about? Can you tell somebody what you feel passionate about? And what really matters to you? I truly believe that your philanthropy has to be an expression of your values. It has to be what you believe passionately about. Is your vision for a better community? Is it for a stronger family? is your vision for a better Alabama? But now the hardest question. If some of you out there know what your vision is, what are you doing about it to make that vision a reality? Now, I'm going to get personal. My slant on philanthropy is personal. It's both professional, as you heard, it's personal, it's spiritual, and it's very much about my family. I guess if I was really honest, I'd say maybe it started from my youth, from a song that you might recall called the Hokey Pokey, where you put your whole self in and you shake it all about. Well, that's what I believe about philanthropy. I don't mean big money, and I don't mean a missionary type commitment. But what I do mean is a plan with a purpose, that your whole self is in it. And I think effective philanthropy is just that. I'm going to give you 5 points to remember about effective philanthropy. It might be your benchmark or your test. It reflects you, your family, and your highest held values and beliefs. There's a focus to it. I don't care if it's an issue, a population, a place, there's some focus to what you do. It has a plan, but like any woman, we have the God-given right to change our minds at any time. So it's flexible. It's unafraid to think big and make mistakes, because that's what philanthropy can do, is take risks and make mistakes. But the most important thing is you know the people you're giving to. You've either met them, you've visited them, and you're partnering with them. You have connected your calendar as well as your checkbook with who you're giving to. Remember the word philos, or to love. Not love of an individual, but love of mankind. Because when you become personally involved in your philanthropy, whether it is here on this campus or on the other side of the world, when you become personally involved, it is a life practice. It can be exhilarating and it can be humbling. Yale President Bart Giamatti transposed a quote from a 16th century poet that says it best: if you truly love, you must truly touch, or entire affection hateth nicer hands. You've got to be involved in it. And then I ask that you consider your assets. You're going to hear some other speakers today talk about different assets, but there are really 4 that we've got to keep in mind when we invest. It's your human capital, which again is your spirituality, your values, what is your vision. It's your intellectual capital. That is, what are you good at? And whatever it is you're good at, are you using it to lead others? Whether it's your children, your community, the people in your workplace, are you using your intellectual capital? Your social capital, I've mentioned several times. How are you connected to your community, to your civic life? And then your financial capital. Are you building a legacy? And are you investing your resources wisely? We have to invest in all 4 C's. Now, you heard me use the word legacy. Well, philanthropy is in the legacy business too. Your legacy is the articulation in word and deed of what you believed and what you did. The legacy that you leave is really the life that you've lived and the philanthropy you've practiced. Now, I have the very wonderful privilege of working for a family that has strongly held beliefs in legacy. A legacy of service and a legacy of giving. They're now working to pass the torch on to the fourth generation of carrying out that legacy of giving and serving. And you only have to be around any member of that family for a few minutes to know part of that is telling stories about what granddad did, what mom did, what sister did, and again, it's not just about giving money. I've seen them take grandchildren to nonprofit organizations where they serve, and I've seen them give grandchildren a letter that says, spend a year figuring out what you would do with some money, and at the end of that year, I'll give you money to give away. And it worked beautifully that Christmas. They're wonderful at helping carry out that legacy. I've had the joy of traveling all over this state and hearing stories just like that. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to develop a TV documentary for Alabama Public Television. And if you haven't seen it, I wish you could, and I'll send copies back here. It's called Change Alabama with a Giving Heart. And it's stories that are shared by Catherine Tucker Wyndham about a small African-American boy growing up in Selma named Ernest Gibb. It's stories of a passionate artist named Toot Riddick from Mobile, Alabama, who transformed York into an artist mecca with her gifts. It's wonderful stories. There are so many remarkable women that have really shown us a way and give us an example. But I have to share, and I told Sid I couldn't give this talk without sharing one of my favorite stories about a woman named Osceola McCarthy. Osceola was a washerwoman in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. She washed bundles of clothes for people for about $10 a bundle. And finally, when she was 87, she had to stop washing and ironing because of arthritis, and she decided to retire. When she retired, she decided to make a gift to the University of Southern Mississippi for scholarships for African American students. The university officials were somewhat taken back when Osceola walked in with her life savings of $150,000 in a bag and said it was her gift to the university. The gifts or the scholarships weren't to start until after her death, but the university officials talked her into letting them go ahead because they wanted her to see a recipient graduate. Well, word started to spread, and matching gifts came in, not from all over the country, but from all over the world. You may have seen Osceola on the Today Show or Good Morning America, or you may have read about her in Reader's Digest or People magazine. But she really couldn't understand why all this fuss. And when she was asked on national TV one morning why she didn't take the money and spend on herself and buy her first home or a car, she just smiled and said, but I am spending it on myself. And you know, it is what we do, our actions and our gifts, that have influence on other people we don't ever realize. A recent Forbes magazine cover story was about Melinda Gates. Now, you may think you know Melinda Gates, but I want to remind you that she works full-time for the largest philanthropy in the world. And Melinda shared this story. Her fiance, Bill Gates, had been asked by accountants and lawyers for years to start a foundation for tax purposes. But Bill resisted, saying, I don't want another entity to deal with. And then in December 1993, at Melinda's wedding shower, Bill's mother, Mary Gates, read a letter aloud that she had written to Melinda. From those to whom much is given, much is expected, was the essence of the letter. And then the following June, Mary Gates died of breast cancer. At Melinda's urging, the first Gates Philanthropy was started in honor of Mary. And Bill's father ran it out of cardboard boxes in their basement. Things have changed. It's a little bigger, a little more complicated, a few more staff people, but she works full time in it. When Melinda was asked in that Forbes article, why do you work so hard? You don't have to do this. Why are you traveling the world over, dealing with poverty and disease, dealing with AIDS patients, holding children dying of malaria in your arms? Why? Melinda said, well, you know, as I thought about strong women in history, I realized that they had always stepped out in some way. My daughter needs a role model. Well, all of us need role models. And I've had a role model, I've had a lot of them, but I do want to share with you a dear friend and mentor who truly is a role model. About 9 years ago, she was dealing with her husband's failing health and terminal illness. And I remember going to the hospital night after night just to visit and check in on her. And finally, at the end, as they were courageously talking about her future, and astute businessman he was, he started trying to prepare her for the financial plans he'd made, what her life would be like, and his provisions. And she stopped him that night and asked for one change. She said, can I take part of this and consolidate it and start a family foundation? This is a woman that had never worked a day in her life, but she had a dream and had a vision and said, I think it might keep our family together closer after you're gone. Well, the last 9 years that I've been able to work with her and watch her love this duty and precious gift he gave her, she named it the Gratitude Foundation in just that, in gratitude. And she and I have a favorite story, and I promise you it's the last one. We'll close soon. But this is our favorite story that I wanted to share with you. And it's called The Wise Woman's Stone. A wise woman who was traveling in the mountains found a precious stone in a stream. The next day, she met another traveler along the path. He was hungry and asked her for food. The wise woman opened her bag to share the food. When she did so, the hungry traveler saw the precious stone in the bag, and he asked the woman to give it to him. She did so without hesitation. The traveler left rejoicing because he knew that that stone was worth enough that it would give him a lifetime of security. A few days later, he went back and returned to the wise woman, and he said, I've been thinking, I know how valuable this stone is, but I give it back to you in the hope that you can give me something even more precious than this stone. Give me what you have within you that enabled you to give me this stone. And so I asked you, what stories will be told about you and your gifts? Because our children's future and our state's future will be shaped by what can only be enacted, risked, planned, and dreamed by each of you, and the stories about your leadership and compassionate philanthropy. Thank you.
Chance to look, the sessions are starting now. One will be in here, the other one will be in the governor's room, which is that way when you walk out, and the third is it across